Maariv Simcha. The holiday of Sukkot, I believe more than any of the other Yomim Tovim that exist in the Jewish calendar, represents a Torah Shabbal Peh. Because there are so many aspects of the Yom Tov that are simply dependent on Torah Shabbal Peh and are not apparent from Torah Shabiktav at all. A major one, in Bizman HaMikdash, that was the korban of the Mincha Maariv, that they would bring water from the Mei HaShiloach, bring it up to the Beit HaMikdash, to the Mizbeach, and pour it on the Mizbeach as a korban. There's no reference for this in the Torah itself. It's purely Torah Shabbal Peh. And therefore it was a matter of dispute during the times of the temple and the time of Rabbi Sheni, and the Gemara in Sukkah records for us that it was a dispute between the Prushim and the Tzdokim. The Tzdokim said it doesn't appear anywhere, you're making it all up. And the Prushim say we have a Masorah Alach LaMoshe B'Sinai to bring this korban. You had the famous and tragic incident in the Beit HaMikdash during the reign of Alexander Yanai, who was the strongest and most powerful of the Hashmonaim kings. And he was also the Kohen Gadol, a fact to which Chazal objected. They said to him, Ravlach Keser Kahuna, it's enough for you that you have the crown of the priesthood, of the being a Kohen Gadol. Anach lecha Keser Malchus. Give away the Keser Malchus. But he was not willing to do so. People who acquire power most of the time don't give it up willingly. And therefore, when he was the Kohen Gadol, so he was an enemy of the Prushim. Because they questioned his legitimacy to be the king. So the Gemara records for us that one Sukkot, when they brought the water up from the Mei HaShiloach to pour it on the Mizbeach as the korban of the Mincha Maariv, he showed his disdain for the Prushim by pouring the water on his feet and not on the Mizbeach. He did this in the Azara in front of tens of thousands of Jews that were gathered there. So the Gemara records for us that the people gathered there were so incensed by this insult that they pelted him with their esrogim. I guess if you have 1,000, 2,000 esrogim flying at you, you're in danger of getting hurt. And he, in response, called out his guard, his army, that Hashmonaim, one of the things that Chazal objected to was that the palace guard, so to speak, were all Gerim from Edom, the Edomites. And the Chazal questioned their Gerus. And the end was that that is how Antipater and Herod came to power. They killed out all of the Hashmonaim, and the palace guard became the head of the country, General Mili. Old stories never go away. So there was a civil war. The Gemara records for us, Josephus records for us as well, that thousands of Jews were killed on Sukkot in the Beit HaMikdash because the civil war broke out against Alexander Yanai. And he persecuted the Chachomim. It wasn't until he passed away, his wife, Shlomis Alexandra, Shlom Tzion Amalka, became the queen, and she installed her brother, Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach, to be the prime minister. So then the Prushim all came back from their exiles, and the Sanhedrin was reconstituted, etc. So there's an example of the holiday of Sukkot being really the war of Torah Shabbal Peh. And it reflected itself in halachas all the time. You know, a halachic sukkah is not much of a building. Chazal said you only need 2 walls. The third wall, you only need a tefach. So it's 2.1 walls that we consider to be 4 walls. And the walls don't have to be real walls. If you have a fence that's 10 tefachim high, so there's difference of opinion how we measure a tefach. But let's say at the far end of the opinion, 3.5 inches in the American or Old English system, which would translate to, I don't know, 16, 18 centimeters. If it's that high, so then the rest of it can be open until the schach. Because we say good achis. The fence we imagine is going all the way up to the schach. That's an imaginary wall. The Gemara says it the other way. If you have a fence fabric hanging from the schach, and it's 10 tefachim, and then let's say it's 20 tefachim away from the ground. It's all open on the side. Then we say good achis, right? It descends. And the other way we say good asik, it ascends. So that's all imaginary. A person walking by in the street, you'll ask him, is there a wall there? What are you talking about? But the Torah Shabbal Peh establishes it as a wall. There's a din of lavud, that if you're within a certain amount of the ground, then you're there, even though you're not there yet. And then there's a halacha of dofen akuma. Dofen akuma is And that's a practical halacha that exists many times. So there's a wall, and then there's an overhang over the wall. Solid overhang. And then you want to build a sukkah, and you want to use that wall as one of the walls for the sukkah. Even though the schach is going to be quite some distance from that wall. So the Gemara tells us, again, through Torah Shabbal Peh, that there's a halacha of Dofen Akuma. Dofen Akuma means the wall bends in. We see the wall as though it bends in to meet the schach, even though in Metzius, in the reality, nothing happened there. The only thing is you're not supposed to sit under that solid part, but the wall counts. It's also Torah Shabbal Peh. So the whole idea of Sukkot, and this is all in the Gemara of Sukkah, is built on the concept of Torah Shabbal Peh. So the oral law tells us what a sukkah is, what the halachas are. It's the same thing regarding the esrog. Pre-Eitz Adar, the Torah says. What's a pre-Eitz Adar? It could be a grapefruit. Who says it's an esrog? And the Gemara goes through all sorts of proofs based on knowledge of the Hebrew language that the only fruit that meets all of the requirements is an etrog. So then that became the etrog. So that's all Torah Shabbal Peh. It's all a Kabbalah of Chazal from Moshe and Sinai. So the whole Jewish world is built upon that. And throughout the ages, there have unfortunately been those that not only deny it, but seem to want to eradicate it. But the basis of our survival is because of Torah Shabbal Peh. That is what has guaranteed our being here until today. So that's the idea of Sukkot, that the Sukkah, which looks flimsy, is always falling in, Sukkah David Anofeles. But that's the eternal Sukkah. So that Sukkah, and under those schach that we live, and we survive and prosper, and that becomes the method of Jewish survival and of Jewish success. So we should have all of that in mind when we sit in our sukkah to realize that it's all based on Torah Shabbal Peh. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer, Rotza Kodesh Baruch Hu L'Zakas Es Yisrael, V'ficha Chibur Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenamar, Adonai Chafetz Aman Tzidko Yadil Torah V'Yadir.